June 20th, 1941. 6 months before Pearl Harbor, the submarine USS O-9 began its final descent. It was a routine deep submergence test in the cold waters off New England. She slipped beneath the waves with 33 men aboard and never resurfaced. For 39 years, the sea kept her secret. Now her wreck has been located, crushed and buckled 450 feet down. The discovery of her battered hull finally provides physical proof of a catastrophic failure long suspected, but never seen. How does a submarine operating in peacetime, less than 30 miles from its home port, simply vanish? And what does the evidence of its instantaneous collapse tell us about the immense unseen forces that claimed 33 lives in a flash? When submarine hulls fail catastrophically, they do not leak gradually. They implode with explosive force. The wreckage of O-9 tells the story that naval investigators could only theorize about for decades. Her hull plates, designed to withstand the crushing pressure of the deep, folded inward like paper. The compression was so violent that the entire pressure hull collapsed in microseconds, faster than human perception, faster than any man aboard could register what was happening. This is the signature of hydrostatic pressure, the weight of hundreds of feet of seawater pressing in from all sides at over 300 pounds per square inch. At the moment of failure, that pressure rushed in at nearly the speed of sound, compressing air pockets with such force that they heated to thousands of degrees, creating flash fires that were extinguished almost as quickly as they ignited. The debris field pattern, spread across the ocean floor, matches precisely what naval engineers would expect from instantaneous hull failure. Not gradual flooding, not an explosion from within, but the catastrophic collapse of a steel tube that briefly lost its battle with the sea. To understand how this happened, we must go back to when this submarine was built for a different war, and why it was still diving decades later. The USS O-9 was born in the closing days of World War I, one of many submarines hastily constructed as America finally entered the global conflict. Laid down at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard in February 1917, she was commissioned in July 1918, just months before the armistice that ended the war. The O-class submarines were considered advanced for their time, but they were transitional designs, bridging the gap between early experimental submersibles and the more robust fleet submarines that would follow. At 172 feet long, with a displacement of 521 tons submerged, the O-9 was modest by modern standards. Her diesel-electric propulsion system could drive her at 14 knots on the surface, but a mere 9 knots submerged. Her designed maximum operating depth was 200 feet, with a test depth of 300 feet, a safety margin that would prove tragically inadequate. Like many warships built for a conflict that ended before they saw action, the O-9's career was initially short-lived. As America demobilized after the Great War, the Navy mothballed dozens of vessels, including the O-9. On June 25, 1931, she was decommissioned and laid up in Philadelphia, where she remained for nearly a decade, slowly corroding in the brackish waters of the Delaware River. But as the 1930s drew to a close and a new global conflict loomed, the United States found itself woefully unprepared for war at sea. The Navy's submarine force was particularly undersized, with too few boats to meet the growing threat of Axis naval power. In this environment of urgency and scarcity, naval planners made a fateful decision. The mothballed O-class submarines would be recommissioned despite their age and technological obsolescence. On April 14, 1941, after 10 years of inactivity, the USS O-9 was officially returned to service under the command of Lieutenant Commander Oliver F. Naquin. The submarine underwent hasty refits and repairs at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard in New Hampshire, but no comprehensive structural assessment was performed on her pressure hull, a critical oversight that would have catastrophic consequences. Veterans of the submarine service who inspected these recommissioned boats privately expressed concerns. Chief Petty Officer William Hargrove, who served on O-9's sister ship O-8, later recalled that those boats were not meant for the kind of service they were being pressed back into. The steel was old, the rivets were corroded, and the hulls had been cycled from pressure to atmospheric too many times. But with war coming, nobody wanted to hear about it. Indeed, there had been warning signs. During initial sea trials in May 1941, O-9 experienced minor flooding through deteriorated hull seals. These incidents were documented, repairs were made, and the boat was declared serviceable. a decision made as much from necessity as from confidence in the vessel's integrity. By June 1941, with U-boats already prowling the Atlantic and American merchant ships under attack, the Navy needed every submarine it could muster. O-9 was ordered to complete comprehensive sea trials, including deep submergence tests to certify her for war patrols. If she passed, she would join the Atlantic Fleet, conducting training missions and potentially engaging German submarines approaching American waters. On June 19, 1941, the O-9 departed Portsmouth Naval Shipyard for what should have been routine trials in the Gulf of Maine. The weather was ideal, clear skies, calm seas, and good visibility. Aboard were 33 men, including her regular crew of 29 and 4 additional personnel to monitor the submarine's performance during testing. The plan called for a series of progressively deeper test dives, culminating in a full-depth test to 300 feet, the submarine's certified maximum test depth. This would prove her readiness for wartime operations, where she might need to evade enemy vessels by diving deep. The morning of June 20th began with shallow test dives, which the O-9 completed without incident. Each successful test built confidence among the crew and the observing officers. At approximately 10:30 in the morning, the submarine surfaced for the final time, reported all systems normal, and prepared for her deep dive test. At 10:38 in the morning, the O-9 began her descent toward 300 feet. 2 other submarines, O-6 and O-10, were operating in the same area, conducting their own exercises. The surface escort vessel, Coast Guard cutter General Green, maintained radio contact with all 3 submarines. The descent initially proceeded according to protocol. At 10:45 in the morning, O-9 radioed that she was passing 100 feet with no issues. At 10:51 in the morning, she transmitted her final message, passing 250 feet, all systems normal. What happened next can now be reconstructed with chilling precision based on the wreckage analysis. As O-9 approached approximately 270 feet, a catastrophic failure occurred in her pressure hull. The most likely point of failure was around a riveted joint or hatch, where metal fatigue had weakened the structure beyond its capacity to withstand the crushing pressure. At that depth, seawater exerts pressure of about 120 pounds per square inch. That means every square foot of the hull was holding back over 17,000 pounds of force. Once a weak point gave way, the failure would have propagated at nearly the speed of sound, traveling through the hull faster than human nerves could transmit pain signals. The technical term for what happened is brittle fracture propagation, where a small crack suddenly spreads through stressed metal. For the men aboard, there would have been perhaps a fraction of a second, the sound of groaning metal, possibly a sharp report like a gunshot as the first plate failed, and then oblivion. The implosion compressed the air inside the submarine so violently that it would have created a momentary temperature spike of several thousand degrees, hot enough to vaporize anything in the direct compression zone. This compression wave would have been followed almost instantly by a cloud of frigid seawater rushing in at hundreds of miles per hour, crushing everything in its path. Death for all 33 men would have been mercifully instantaneous. The entire event, from first structural failure to complete hull collapse, took less than 1/10 of a second, too fast for any emergency procedures, too fast even for human consciousness to register what was happening. On the surface, the General Green waited for O-9's scheduled check-in at 11 a.m. When no communication came, the vessel began calling the submarine on underwater telephone, a primitive sound-based communication system. No response. By 11:15 a.m., the cutter's captain ordered the other submarines to surface and report. Both O-6 and O-10 responded promptly, but O-9 remained silent. At 11:30 a.m., oil and air bubbles were spotted on the surface approximately 8 miles east of the Isle of Shoals. The chilling realization set in. A submarine was down, with all hands. What followed was the largest submarine rescue operation in United States naval history. To that date, within hours, every available vessel from Portsmouth Naval Shipyard was deployed to the area. The submarine rescue ship USS Falcon, equipped with dive bells and specialized equipment, arrived by nightfall. Navy divers prepared to descend to what they believed was O-9's last position, but faced a daunting challenge: the depth. The water at the search location was approximately from 400 to 450 feet deep, well beyond the safe diving limits of the era. Navy divers in 1941 typically operated to a maximum of 300 feet, and even those dives required lengthy decompression. Several attempts were made to reach the presumed depth of the wreck, but divers could not descend safely beyond 350 feet. For 7 days, the search continued with increasing desperation. Drag lines swept the bottom, hoping to snag the submarine's superstructure. Early sonar technology, primitive by modern standards, scanned the seabed but yielded inconclusive results. The families of the 33 men gathered at Portsmouth, clinging to diminishing hope as each hour passed. On June 27, 1941, the Navy officially declared the O-9 an all-hands lost. The formal investigation that followed concluded that the loss of O-9 was in all probability due to a major casualty to her pressure hull, resulting in the flooding of the boat. But without examining the wreckage, investigators could only speculate about the specific cause of the disaster. For the families of the lost submariners, the lack of physical evidence or recovered remains meant no closure. There would be no burials, no recovered personal effects, and not even certainty about exactly how their loved ones had perished. The sea had claimed them completely. The tragedy of O-9 receded from public memory as America entered World War II, 6 months later, after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Far larger naval disasters would follow, and the loss of an obsolete submarine during peacetime exercises became a footnote in the naval history of the period. But for the submarine service, the loss of O-9 served as a sobering reminder of the unforgiving nature of undersea operations. Subsequent classes of submarines incorporated stronger pressure hulls, more rigorous testing protocols, and improved safety features. The disaster contributed to the eventual abandonment of riveted hull construction in favor of welded hulls, which provided superior pressure resistance. For 39 years, the exact location and condition of O-9 remained unknown. She was one of many lost submarines that had vanished without a trace, her final resting place marked on nautical charts, with the notation "submarine lost in this approximate position." Then, in 1997, advances in underwater survey technology made possible what had been impossible in 1941, leading to discovery. A team led by underwater archaeologist Robert Ballard, famous for discovering the wreck of the Titanic, deployed side-scan sonar to search the area where O-9 was believed to have been lost. The sonar revealed a distinctive submarine-shaped object on the seabed, approximately 8.5 miles east of the Isle of Shoals, at a depth of 450 feet, slightly deeper than investigators had estimated in 1941. Remotely operated vehicles equipped with cameras were dispatched to visually inspect the site. What the cameras revealed confirmed the worst fears of the 1941 investigation. O-9 had suffered a catastrophic hull collapse. The pressure hull was crushed inward, with hull plates folded and buckled in the classic pattern of implosion. The submarine's conning tower had been completely flattened, and the bow and stern sections showed massive compression damage. Most tellingly, the wreck was largely intact rather than broken into sections, the signature of instantaneous catastrophic failure rather than gradual flooding. Had the submarine flooded slowly through a smaller breach, the pressure would have equalized, and the hull would have remained structurally intact as it sank. The pattern of debris surrounding the submarine told the story of her final moments. Items that had been inside the pressure hull were scattered in a tight pattern around the wreck, blown outward by the violent compression of air during the implosion. This forensic evidence aligned perfectly with modern understanding of submarine hull failures. The boat had imploded catastrophically at depth, almost certainly killing everyone aboard in an instant. Analysis of the wreckage revealed the likely cause of the disaster: metal fatigue in the submarine's aging pressure hull, exacerbated by years of neglect during her decade in mothballs. The stresses of repeated pressure cycling during her original service life, combined with corrosion during her years of inactivity, had weakened critical structural components beyond their safe operating limits. Modern metallurgical understanding suggests that O-9's hull, constructed in 1918 using the materials and techniques of that era, was simply not designed for the extended service life demanded of it in 1941. The steel used in early submarines had higher carbon content and more impurities than later alloys, making it more vulnerable to fatigue cracking and brittle fracture, especially at the low temperatures found at depth in the Gulf of Maine. The discovery of O-9 finally provided answers to questions that had haunted submarine designers, naval investigators, and the families of the lost crew for nearly 4 decades. It confirmed that the submarine had indeed suffered catastrophic hull collapse, that the failure had been instantaneous, and that the maximum depth reached was likely somewhat greater than the planned test depth of 300 feet. For the modern submarine service, the wreck of O-9 serves as both memorial and warning. Her crushed hull is a stark reminder of the unforgiving physics of deep submergence and the fatal consequences of pushing aging technology beyond its limits. Every modern submarine incorporates lessons learned from disasters like O-9, with multiple redundant safety systems, rigorous testing protocols, and comprehensive hull monitoring to prevent similar tragedies. Today, the wreck of USS O-9 remains undisturbed at her final resting place 450 feet beneath the Gulf of Maine. The site is considered a war grave, protected by U.S. law against salvage or disturbance. The 33 men who perished with her are memorialized on monuments at Portsmouth Naval Shipyard and in the Eternal Patrol roster of lost submarines. Their sacrifice reminds us that the conquest of the underwater realm has come at a heavy price. The ocean, even in peacetime, remains one of humanity's most dangerous frontiers. If you found this exploration of the USS O-9 disaster illuminating, join our Ocean Attacks community. Subscribe now for more deep dives into maritime mysteries and underwater tragedies. Hit the notification bell to never miss an upload and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, remember, the sea keeps its secrets, but history demands we uncover them.